Greta Thunberg was never the threat they said she was. From her first viral speech at the UN to her stern-faced stare-downs with world leaders, she was marketed as the angry voice of a generation, an untouchable truth-teller who stood up to corrupt politicians, cowardly businessmen, and a world asleep at the wheel. The media called her fearless. Activist groups called her a warrior. Elites, NGOs, and tech billionaires fawned over her with the reverence of old men worshipping an oracle. But the truth behind Greta Thunberg's rise is not a tale of Spartan courage. It is something far darker. The story of a fragile teenager, racked by mental health struggles, projected onto the world stage by the very institutions she supposedly opposed, and then paraded around as a messiah until the cracks inevitably showed. She wasn't feared by power. She was used by it. In a revealing interview on BBC Radio 4's Today program on December 30th, 2019, Greta's father, Svante Thunberg, admitted something that should have sent shockwaves through the media narrative. Greta, he said, had suffered from deep depression for 3 to 4 years before she launched her climate activism. She had stopped speaking, eating, or going to school, and had fallen off a cliff mentally. "I didn't do it to save the climate," Svante said plainly. "I did it to save my child." Let that sink in. The young woman who would soon go toe-to-toe with presidents, billionaires, and global corporations was barely functioning just a few years prior. Her rise wasn't some bold, calculated act of rebellion. It was a coping mechanism for a struggling teenager. That makes her story not inspirational, but tragic, and it raises an uncomfortable question. If your child is mentally fragile, vulnerable, and trying to recover, why would you allow her to be launched onto the global stage, let alone into the dirtiest battlefield of all, international politics? This wasn't leadership. This was child performance art, directed and amplified by adults who should have known better. Greta was sold as a Spartan figure, fearless, stoic, driven by conviction. But true warriors don't rely on orchestrated PR campaigns, legacy media platforms, and international institutions to prop them up. Her speeches were filled with fire and brimstone. "How dare you? You have stolen my dreams. We are watching you." But these were adolescent screams, not strategic strikes. She was not challenging power. She was giving it exactly what it wanted, a controlled symbol of youthful outrage that changed nothing and threatened no one. Why was she invited to Davos? To the UN? To speak alongside world leaders? Because she was never dangerous to the system. She fit perfectly within it. She didn't lead a grassroots movement. She didn't create alternative structures or call for genuine civil disobedience. Her message was emotionally appealing but structurally empty, a loop of slogans, fear, and moral superiority. The media, the WEF, and global NGOs embraced her because she allowed them to appear radical without sacrificing power. This is not rebellion. This is rebranding. The legacy media inflated Greta to messianic heights. She graced magazine covers. She was offered book deals, documentaries, photo ops with presidents and royals. Like a modern-day Joan of Arc in a branded hoodie, she was held aloft by the same machine that has historically used and devoured child stars for generations. Because make no mistake, they were always going to turn on her. The media builds child saviors the same way it builds celebrities, with one hand raising them and the other sharpening the knives for the fall. Once her novelty wore off and her once sanitized messaging began to drift into real politics, the tone began to shift. Suddenly, the same voices that once called her brave began to label her divisive, irritating, ungrateful. This was not a bug. It was the plan. Greta was not protected. She was exploited, a public figure created to absorb collective guilt and sell institutional virtue, not to dismantle anything real. For all her fire and fury, there was a disturbing selectivity in Greta's activism. She took strong stances on climate change, but avoided most difficult political issues, especially those that exposed the hypocrisy of the Western liberal order. She said nothing about war in Yemen, nothing about Libya, nothing about Syria or Iraq or the Congo. And then came Palestine. It wasn't until October 2023, years into her public career, that Greta Thunberg finally expressed solidarity with Palestinians. And even then, it was couched in cautious language and met with fury from European NGOs and Israeli institutions, many of which had previously celebrated her as an icon. Where was her courage when the bombs were falling on Gaza in 2021, or 2014, or 2009? A true Spartan mindset demands moral clarity, not convenient silence. Greta had the world's attention and chose to use it only when it aligned with her handlers' comfort zones. When she finally did speak on Palestine, it was too little too late and only after the political winds had shifted. That is not leadership. That is followership. From day one, Greta's path was manufactured, not grassroots. Her initial school strikes were publicized and packaged by media-savvy activists, and her early visibility was boosted by institutions that were already ideologically aligned with her parents and handlers. Her family background included actors, musicians, and authors. Her team was supported by NGOs, PR firms, and sustainability platforms that ensured she stayed on script and on message. Was she brave? Yes, in the way any emotionally raw teenager is when they throw themselves into something they believe in. But was she strategic? No. Was she self-aware? Not at all. And was she ever actually dangerous to the people truly in charge? Absolutely not. Greta Thunberg was called a warrior. But Spartans weren't warriors because they yelled the loudest. They were warriors because they trained, endured, sacrificed, and held the line under pressure. They weren't child soldiers. They were disciplined men and women who earned their authority through service and hardship. Greta was a child sold as a soldier, but one who served the needs of the very empire she claimed to despise. She had no depth of field, no long-term strategy, no resilience under fire. When the media tide shifted, her silence and confusion revealed what she truly was, a fragile symbol propped up by adults until she was no longer useful. Her failure isn't hers alone. It belongs to the world that used her as a moral prop, to those who exploited her pain and called it purpose. And it is a reminder to every young man and woman, conviction alone is not enough. If you want to challenge the world, you need more than slogans and sincerity. You need strength, resilience, wisdom, and clarity. You need the Spartan Mindset. Order the Spartan Mindset today and embark on your journey toward becoming the leader your world needs. Let your struggles forge you into a warrior of character and resolve. The Spartan Mindset provides a comprehensive and actionable guide to personal development and resilience. Available now for just $19.99. Purchase your copy from the links in the description box below and on this channel's homepage. Because your future begins with the right mindset, the Spartan Mindset.